Exercise is a top recommendation for health. But why does exercise seem to make some people sick? Today, let's look into the fascinating science behind exercise-induced reactions and other cofactors that can amplify allergic reactions to dangerous extents. While I had no idea any of my symptoms had anything to do with food, I did know some of them showed up with exercise. Exercise was at best uncomfortable and sometimes risky. All throughout my teens and 20s, jogging caused abdominal pain and frequently diarrhea. I could feel my intestines painfully jiggling inside of me. If I jogged every day, it seemed my body adapted the best it could, so this problem would reduce. But if I even skipped a day or two, the pain would come right back. Occasionally, this led to my vision going black and vomiting after jogging. Understandably, some companions were spooked and never asked me to work out together again. Any exercise with enough intensity to cause me to sweat would make me itch all over. And uphill hiking more than an hour long would cause additional problems. I would become swollen, pale, and nauseated. At first, I thought I was weak and didn't have endurance. But the odd thing was that I wasn't out of breath and I was entirely fine the next day, when others who seemed fine on the mountain might be suffering from muscle aches and fatigue. In my 30s, I played tennis regularly, but about 1 week out of the month, I did not feel well enough to exercise due to painful periods and headaches. And out of the 3 weeks I could exercise, at least one of the weeks I suffered from migraines immediately after. It was bad enough that I would have to spend the rest of the day in a dark, quiet room. So at best, I could exercise without consequences only half the month. All these symptoms became a thing of the past once I became aware of my allergies, which truly brought back the joy in moving my body. As I mentioned in my last video, removing wheat removed most of my migraines, including the ones after exercise. And some of my other allergies, like milk, was behind the vomiting and blacking out. So while I knew exercise caused problems, what I didn't know was that the real cause for me was the food allergies that were hidden and only occasionally revealed under the strain of exercise. Turns out, food-dependent exercise-induced allergies are a thing. Food-dependent exercise-induced anaphylaxis was first described in a case study in 1979, which seems fairly recent by medical standards. This is an example of allergies where symptoms are provoked only when 2 or more factors are present at the same time. This makes it much harder to tease out the cause. This case study describes someone who ate shellfish regularly without issue and exercised regularly without issue, but the two together? Anaphylaxis. Side note, case studies like this, especially reporting something that hadn't been reported before, sometimes have amusing details that show the unusual dedication the team had. It's interesting amidst the mostly dry research literature. In this case, one of the doctors accompanied the patient for at least 30 separate 10 to 15K runs carrying epinephrine and antihistamines until they finally caught a reaction that was linked back to oysters consumed 20 hours before the run. But it gets even more complicated. In some cases, a combination of 2 different foods followed by exercise may be required to elicit a reaction. Each food on its own failed to produce a reaction. And this could account for negative challenge tests in patients with a strong clinical history suggesting food-dependent exercise-induced anaphylaxis. And more recently, a case was reported that could only be provoked by a combination of food additives, ethanol, wheat flour, and exercise, whereas exercise challenges with some of these individually were negative. And that's why it can be really hard to make an accurate diagnosis. You have to have 2 or more factors going on at the same time to reproduce the anaphylaxis reaction in the clinic. But that's not all. There was another twist. It wasn't just exercise. NSAIDs like aspirin and ibuprofen could also trigger reactions when combined with foods. Then, researchers found they could provoke reactions with high doses of food alone, no exercise or other cofactors needed. Turns out, exercise wasn't the key factor, but one of many possible factors. Some patients did not react to food plus exercise, but showed symptoms when aspirin and alcohol were added. And some researchers call this augmentation factor triggered food allergy. Common augmenting factors are physical exercise, menstruation, NSAIDs, alcohol, body temperature extremes, both cold and heat, acute infections, stress, sleep deprivation, dehydration, and antacids. The existence of these cofactors lower the threshold of the reaction and increase its severity. The more you add on, the more likely anaphylaxis becomes, and patterns are specific to the individual. So it's kind of like stacking blocks until you reach a certain threshold of reaction, and you can reach it in different ways. It can happen by eating too much of the problem food alone, or with a lesser amount combined with exercise, NSAIDs, or other cofactors. Looking back, my seemingly random reactions that happened even when I didn't exercise make perfect sense through the lens of cofactors. They were more likely to happen on or around my period, a known cofactor. And because my periods were always painful, I was taking NSAIDs, another cofactor. I remember sometimes I was eating outside in the cold, temperature extremes, and it was also more likely during travel and social events, extra stress. I was stacking cofactors without realizing it. While my focus has been on food-triggered reactions since that was my experience, it's important to note that roughly half of exercise-induced anaphylaxis cases may involve environmental triggers rather than food. Exercise-induced allergies are considered rare, but I suspect it is underdiagnosed. In fact, all augmenting factor-triggered allergies are likely greatly underdiagnosed, given how difficult they could be to identify. Cofactors reportedly play a role in approximately 30% of anaphylactic reactions in adults and 14 to 18% in children. Cofactors and hidden triggers may be behind cases of anaphylaxis where the cause is never found. Physical exercise, acute infections, drugs, alcohol, and menstruation are the external cofactors associated with more severe systemic reactions. It's also why we're told that the person having an allergic reaction should not run when trying to get epinephrine, since it can amplify the reaction. Have you suspected you have reactions with exercise? Or do they only happen sometimes? Start tracking your patterns with this new knowledge of cofactors. Track what you ate, food and medications, type and intensity of exercise, and other known factors such as phase of menstrual cycle, stress level, sleep quality, alcohol, any extremes in weather or temperature, and symptoms experienced. Look for patterns. Do reactions happen only after eating certain foods before exercise? Only during certain times of the month? Only when multiple factors combine? See an allergist who can help identify your triggers and prescribe emergency epinephrine if needed. If your reactions are food dependent, only eat foods you know are safe before exercise. Most recommendations are to be cautious from 4 hours before to 1 hour after exercise, but there are exceptions like the 20-hour before exercise in the initial case study, so it's best to be aware of your own patterns. If you have seasonal allergies, be cautious during peak pollen season and perhaps consider indoor workouts. Refrain from exercise in extremely hot or cold weather and high humidity. And for everyone, stop exercise at the first sign of a reaction, whether it's itching, swelling, nausea, or any other kind of concerning symptom. Usually, this will be enough to halt the worst of the symptoms. Once I identified my triggers, I'm so much freer to enjoy exercise. In my case, I completely avoid my food allergens and rarely take NSAIDs anymore, so I'm safe to exercise whenever I want. I do carry epinephrine and antihistamines and usually exercise with others for added safety. Understanding cofactors didn't just solve my exercise problems. It opened my eyes to how allergic reactions work in general. Even people with well-known classic allergies can be affected by cofactors, as I learned with my daughter. She had a scary reaction once that baffled us. She has a severe allergy to egg and extremely sensitive to raw egg, but she seemed fine touching baked goods with egg or if she happened to eat like a tiny crumb of it. Well, one night she had one of the worst reactions we've seen so far, and the only thing we could think of was that she had touched something with baked egg, and a trace of it could have been eaten since she ate something else right after. So what was the difference? Cofactors, most likely. We were traveling, so higher stress, and she had just been dancing, got sweaty, and took a hot shower, and that's when the reaction started. The exercise, heat, and humidity may have pushed her over the threshold. If you've ever had mysterious symptoms that come and go, that seem random or inconsistent, consider whether cofactors might be at play. The answers might be hidden in the patterns. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.